Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a story of royal drama, political chess, and a decision that redrew the map of Europe. We're talking about the year 1701 and the monumental crisis that unfolded when King Charles II of Spain died. Why was this such a big deal? Well, Charles, bless his heart, had no children. This left the vast and wealthy Spanish Empire, which included not just Spain, but territories in Italy, the Netherlands, and a massive chunk of the Americas up for grabs. It was like the ultimate royal lottery, and every major power in Europe wanted the winning ticket. Now, let's set the stage. The late 17th century was a chessboard dominated by powerful players, most notably King Louis XIV of France, the Sun King, and the Holy Roman Emperor, Leopold I. Both of these monarchs had strong family ties to the Spanish throne. Louis XIV's wife was Charles II's older half-sister, and his own mother was a Spanish princess. Leopold I was Charles's first cousin, and his mother was also a Spanish princess. To complicate things even more, both of these royal ladies had, upon their marriages, technically renounced their claims to the Spanish throne. But let's be real, when an empire is on the line, such promises are often seen as mere suggestions. For years, the great powers of Europe had been nervously watching the declining health of Charles II. He was known as Charles the Bewitched due to his numerous physical and mental ailments, which were largely the result of generations of Habsburg inbreeding. Diplomats across the continent were already trying to carve up the Spanish Empire before Charles was even gone, hoping to avoid a full-blown war. They came up with something called the Partition Treaties. The idea was to divide the Spanish inheritance between the French and Austrian claimants in a way that would, hopefully, maintain the delicate balance of power in Europe. They didn't want any single nation to become overwhelmingly dominant. It sounds sensible, right? There was just one tiny problem. They forgot to ask the Spanish what they wanted. The Spanish nobility and government were furious. The idea of foreign powers slicing up their empire like a pie was a profound insult to their national pride. They were determined to keep the empire whole, united under a single heir. So, as Charles II lay on his deathbed, the pressure on him was immense. He was torn between the two main claimants, the French candidate, Philip, Duke of Anjou, who was Louis XIV's grandson, and the Austrian candidate, Archduke Charles, the younger son of Emperor Leopold I. The French faction at the Spanish court whispered in his ear, arguing that only the might of France could guarantee the integrity of the Spanish Empire. The pro-Austrian faction argued for keeping the crown within the Habsburg family. In the final, dramatic moments of his life, Charles II made a decision that would shock the world. His last will and testament was unsealed, and it named one sole heir to the entire, undivided Spanish Empire. And the winner was Philip, Duke of Anjou, the French claimant. There was a condition, though. The crowns of France and Spain must never be united under one person. This was Charles's desperate attempt to preserve his empire while trying to prevent a French superpower from swallowing Europe whole. When the news reached Versailles, Louis XIV was faced with a monumental choice. He could either accept the will making his grandson the King of Spain and risking a massive war, or he could stick to the previous partition treaty, which would give him a smaller but less contested piece of the pie. Louis, never one to shy away from ambition, famously declared, "The Pyrenees no longer exist," and accepted the will. He presented his grandson to the court as Philip V of Spain. This single act was seen as a direct challenge to the rest of Europe. The English, the Dutch, and the Austrians were terrified. A Franco-Spanish super-state that would completely upend the balance of power. Their worst fears seemed to be coming true. The reaction was swift. The other European powers saw Louis XIV's move as an act of aggression. They believed he was aiming for universal monarchy, a French-dominated continent. And so, the Grand Alliance was reborn, uniting England, the Dutch Republic, and the Holy Roman Empire against the combined might of France and Spain. The stage was set for a conflict that would rage for over a decade. The succession crisis of 1701 had officially ignited the War of the Spanish Succession, a global conflict fought not just in Europe, but in the colonies of North America and beyond. This war was one of the most significant conflicts of the early 18th century. It featured legendary generals like the Duke of Marlborough for the English and Prince Eugene of Savoy for the Austrians, who won a series of stunning victories against the French at battles like Blenheim and Ramillies. The war was long, bloody, and incredibly expensive for all sides. It dragged on, with fortunes shifting back and forth. For a time, it looked as though the Grand Alliance might completely crush France and install their own candidate, Archduke Charles, on the Spanish throne. But then, another twist of fate intervened. In 1711, the Holy Roman Emperor, Joseph I, died. His younger brother, the Austrian claimant to the Spanish throne, Archduke Charles, inherited the Habsburg lands and became Emperor Charles VI. Suddenly, the Grand Alliance had a new problem. If they won the war and put Charles on the Spanish throne, he would control both the Austrian and Spanish empires, recreating the vast domain of the 16th century Emperor Charles V. This was the exact imbalance of power they had originally gone to war to prevent. The British, in particular, realized that a united Austro-Spanish empire was just as dangerous as a Franco-Spanish one. This dramatic turn of events paved the way for peace. The exhausted nations came to the negotiating table, leading to the series of treaties known as the Peace of Utrecht in 1713. So, what was the final outcome? Philip V, the French candidate, was confirmed as the King of Spain, establishing the Bourbon dynasty that rules Spain to this day. However, he had to renounce any claim to the French throne, upholding the key condition of Charles II's will. The Spanish Empire was, however, partitioned. Spain lost its Italian territories and the Spanish Netherlands to Austria. It also ceded Gibraltar and Minorca to Great Britain, giving the British a crucial foothold in the Mediterranean. France, while keeping its grandson on the Spanish throne, was exhausted and nearly bankrupt. The War of the Spanish Succession, sparked by the crisis of 1701, fundamentally reshaped the European political landscape. It confirmed the rise of Great Britain as a major colonial and maritime power, checked the ambitions of Louis XIV's France, and established the principle of the balance of power as the guiding tenet of international diplomacy for the next century. It all started with one king, no heir, and a will that set the world on fire. It's a powerful reminder of how the personal and the political can collide to change the course of history. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the succession crisis of 1701. It's a complex but fascinating story, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next historical adventure. Let me know in the comments what you think. Was Louis XIV right to accept the will? We'll see you in the next one.